The endocrine system. So the endocrine system starts on page 482 and goes through 485. We're just going to go through 484. So on page 482, it says, what is the function of the endocrine system? Your endocrine system actually controls your body's functions and helps to maintain homeostasis by using hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers made in one cell or tissue that cause a change in another cell or tissue that's in a different part of the body. Your hormones are produced by endocrine glands. A gland is just a group of cells that make those special chemicals, those hormones, for your body. And unlike direct signals of the nervous system, these signals are sent by the endocrine system. They're indirect because they have to cycle through the whole body. They actually travel through our bloodstream. So there's a connection between endocrine and circulatory because the hormones travel in the bloodstream. They travel from the endocrine gland where they're made, and then they reach every cell in your body. However, they only affect cells that have what we call a specific receptor. Each hormone has its own receptor, and it affects only cells that have that receptor. It's kind of like a lock in a key. Not every key works on every lock. Only one key usually works for one lock. And so that's kind of how the hormones and the receptor cells work. The hormones are all going out there, but it only works on a cell if it has that receptor. So the cells that have those receptors are called target cells. Many cells throughout your body have the same receptors, and so the hormones are able to perform many functions at the same time in different cells. So if you look at the picture at the bottom, you see when you're surprised, a hormone called adrenaline makes you more alert. Hormones are released from the endocrine cell. They travel through the bloodstream. They bind or connect to a receptor on a target cell. Sometimes that target cell is very far away. So here is kind of an example of what those target cells look like. Explain the difference between an endocrine cell and a target cell. So the endocrine cell is the one that makes the hormone. The target cell is the one that receives the hormone. So you're going to write that down. And then, of course, we're going to underline that the structure that allows hormones to affect only certain cells, and that is the receptor. Each hormone has its own receptor that only affects cells that have that receptor. On your notes, the main function is to control body functions and help maintain homeostasis using hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers as opposed to electrical, like in the nervous system. And a gland is a group of cells that make those hormones. Your hormones travel through the bloodstream. All right, so we're going to talk on the next page about all of these different glands, and there are a bunch of them. So as you're looking at, anytime you hear the word glands or you hear the word hormones, probably endocrine system. So when we look at page 483, your body has several endocrine glands or tissues that make up your endocrine system. Your pituitary gland secretes hormones that affect other glands. They stimulate growth and sexual development. The hypothalamus is in the brain, so is the pituitary, and it controls the release of the hormones that the pituitary gland makes. So pituitary might make the hormone, hypothalamus says release the hormones. The pineal gland is also in the brain. It produces hormones that are essential that control your sleep, your aging, your reproduction, and your body temperature. Your thyroid controls your metabolism. If you've ever heard, oh, he has such a high metabolism, meaning burns calories quickly, or, oh, he has a very low metabolism, meaning he doesn't burn calories very quickly. That's all related to your thyroid. Now, your parathyroid is not the same as the thyroid, and that controls the calcium levels in your blood. Remember, calcium is stored in your bones, and so the parathyroid tells the bones, we got plenty of calcium circulating around. Why don't we store some of that? And if there's not enough calcium circulating in your blood, then the parathyroid tells your bones, hey, release some of that calcium into the blood so we can get that level up. So parathyroid interacts with skeletal system on the calcium levels. There are hormones that are actually made in your reproductive organs, your ovaries, which is in the female, and your testes, which are in the male, that actually controls reproduction. And it doesn't tell you here, but the female has the ovaries, and that produces estrogen, which ends up making little girls look like women. All of the characteristics of being a mature adult for a female. And then the testes in the male produces something called testosterone. And testosterone. That is what takes what would look like a little boy, and then as testosterone is released, that changes the characteristics of the little boy into a man. So like the deeper voice, or bulkier muscle mass, or any of the other characteristics that come along with growing up. And then we have other endocrine glands like the pancreas. The pancreas regulates your blood sugar levels, and your adrenal glands control your fight or flight response by making adrenaline. So we're going to add that, adrenaline. If you have ever been, I don't know, we have like a bull in a pasture, and I didn't realize he was in that pasture until I was already in the fence with him, and then he comes charging towards me. Well, I had this, oh my gosh, fight or flight response. My heart rate increased, my respirations increased. That's because adrenaline from my adrenal glands was dumped into my bloodstream, and that helps me to either fight off the bull, which didn't happen, or run, which did happen, flight. I was just fast enough to get to the gate before he got to the gate, and that's all I really needed to do was just get to the gate, right? And then he's all nice, he wants to be fed. But so at the bottom, you're going to look at all of the functions, and here are some of the locations on this picture. Now, the thymus is actually listed in your textbook pages in the first group of textbook pages, and it's an organ that's in your chest. Some white blood cells are made in the bone marrow and finish developing in the thymus. And from the thymus, those white blood cells travel through the lymphatic system to other areas of your body. The thymus gets smaller as the person gets older. It says this organ is also a part of the endocrine system. But for some reason, they didn't tell you about it in the endocrine system part of this. So for thymus, you can just put helps complete WBC, which is white blood cell development. And there's a little picture of it. So you're going to go ahead and list the main functions of the pancreas and the ovaries. They told you what the pituitary is, and so you're going to list those two. On to page 480. Nope, let's do our notes. All right, so we have the pituitary gland that secretes hormones that affect other glands, and it also stimulates growth and development. And then we have the hypothalamus that is in your brain and controls the release of hormones from the pituitary gland. And then we have the pineal gland, which is also in the brain. All three of these are in the brain. The pineal gland produces hormones that control your sleep, your aging, your reproduction, and your body temperature. Your thyroid controls your metabolism. Your parathyroid controls your calcium levels in your blood. Your ovaries are the female reproductive organ that produces estrogen and controls reproduction. Your ovaries are actually where the eggs are located in the female. We'll talk about that more on reproductive system. The testes are from the male. That produces testosterone. The sex cell that the testes produce is the sperm, which is part of the reproductive system. And then the pancreas regulates your blood sugar levels. Your adrenal glands control your fight or flight response and produce adrenaline. So when we talk about all of these levels, we have to have a feedback system that controls how much of these are in our blood. So when we talk about how that's controlled, it's your body internal environment is maintaining what we call homeostasis by increasing or decreasing the amount of hormones in your bloodstream. That happens via a feedback mechanism, kind of like the thermostat on your air conditioner at home. So like if you want it to be 78 degrees, or less than 78 degrees, you set the thermostat on 78, and if it goes above that, the air comes on. If it's below that, the air doesn't come on. That's a feedback cycle. Okay, so it's a cycle of events in which information from one step controls or affects a previous step or another step. There's two types of feedback. It can be positive or negative. In negative feedback, the effect on the hormone is that it's going to turn down or lower the amount. It's going to stop producing them. So when you eat food, your blood sugar level goes up, therefore insulin is released and the blood sugar levels are coming down. Once that happens, the low blood sugar levels tell the pancreas, hey, stop releasing insulin, and then it's turned off. Now, if it's a positive feedback, then it's going to stimulate or increase the release of that hormone. So oxytocin is the chemical in the female body that makes your uterus contract when you're in labor to deliver a baby. And so when the fetus matures in the uterus, both it and the mother produce oxytocin. Oxytocin stimulates the contractions stimulate more oxytocin to be released, and then therefore the labor progresses because you have more and more contractions until the baby is born. And then once the baby is born, then those contractions turn off. And so you're going to describe the difference between negative and positive feedback. There are two charts here that you can look at to figure that out. So at the bottom it says the feedback mechanism is a cycle of events in which information from one step controls or affects another step or previous step. And the two types are positive, where the release of hormones is increased, positive and increased, that goes together, or negative, causes the release of hormones to be reduced, or negative, that goes together. You're going to cut this out and glue it onto page 35 in your journal.